Donald Trump has never claimed that he was exonerated in the Michael Cohen case in the Southern District of New York, where Donald Trump himself was accused by federal prosecutors of committing exactly the same campaign finance crimes that Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to and is going to prison for. Here's the president how much he really doesn't want to talk about that investigation.
The Southern District has spoken to Keith Schiller.
I have no idea.
Joining our discussion now, Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com and a professor of politics and media at Morgan State University. He's also an MSNBC contributor. And back with us is John Heilemann. And Jason, the president rarely walks away that fast. When they ask him anything, he always tends to hang in there and throw around as many words as he can come up with to kind of deflect. But he didn't even attempt a deflection when you mention the Southern District and Hope Hicks and Keith Schiller.
Well, yeah, that's because Donald Trump is actually shook when it comes to these issues. These are people in his very close orbit. These are people who he not only had personal relationships with, but people who he probably spoke to in very casual ways. But Lawrence, this is the important thing to remember why this is so key. One, the president knows that it's his business dealings in New York that might ultimately bring him down. He also knows that Hope Hicks has already agreed and already turned over documentation to the House Judiciary Committee. He knows that there could probably potentially be investigations into Schiller's consulting for the RNC that nobody's been able to explain, $250,000 to a former security chief who hasn't been in the White House since 2017. So he knows that all of these different sort of New York associated issues and these people in his close orbit might be the most dangerous people to his future next to Michael Cohen, who's already going to jail.
John Heilemann, when I would see you on your circus show on Showtime in the New Hampshire primary, for example, other places, trying to get the microphone to Donald Trump, Keith Schiller was always there. He was always standing there. You always had to deal with Keith Schiller on the campaign trail if you were trying to get your microphone near the president. You also had to deal with Hope Hicks,
sure.
A great deal. Talk about how close these two people are to the president.
Well,
were
extraordinarily close. You think about, even at the time when Trump first entered the race, and you talk about the New Hampshire primary, that's relatively late in the evolution here. We're talking about in the period of time when Donald Trump when it was really a one-man band with a very small retinue around him. These were the core of it. And so you had Corey Lewandowski and Hope Hicks and Keith Schiller. This was a very small nucleus around Trump who thought he could run a presidential campaign basically on his own at the beginning. Turned out, obviously, to be a successful strategy in the sense of winning the Republican nomination and winning the presidency. But these were people who Lawrence, that the proximity to the principal confers power. It also confers knowledge. You spend enough time in the proximity with a candidate, you get to find out all the dirty laundry. Sometimes the laundry is very dirty. Sometimes the laundry is not so dirty. But you find out exactly how dirty it is. And those people, including Michael Cohen, who sat near Trump, who were near his office, who were on the bus with him, on the plane with him, everywhere he went, they saw a lot of stuff. And some of it has been reported, and much of it is not. And I think you're going to talk at the end of the show about why Donald Trump might have a very bad day if he doesn't get inaugural on the day when he leaves office. If he leaves office in 2021, these people are the core to why that why that day might be so bad. And I don't want to front run your segment, but they're at the core of it.
No, well, and Jason, this is obviously one of the problems the president has the minute he leaves office. It just may be that the only reason he hasn't been indicted is that he's president of the United States in the New York case. That statute of limitations runs beyond his first term as president. So if he doesn't win re-election, he could be greeted by this case in a very formal legal way on his first day as a private citizen.
Yeah. For President Trump, the light at the end of the tunnel might actually be a police car coming towards his house because he's clearly, there are people who are going to be lined up to hit this guy with lawsuits the moment that he leaves. And the problem is, it's not just behavior, Lawrence, that the president may have engaged in before he got into office. It's also behavior that he is very likely and possibly his family has engaged to while he has been in office. So, this is part of sort of the larger problem that we've had with this sort of administration administration from the beginning, that it seems like they are constantly mired in corrupt behavior. And I will say this about these two people who are close to them. They seem so far, when you look at so many people in Trump's orbit who have already gotten in trouble, who may be facing jail time, they have been relatively unscathed. So we don't know if that's because they have been cooperating with authorities, as we've heard in this report from the Wall Street Journal, or if it's because they think he's going to protect them one day.
Jason Johnson and John Heilemann, thank you both for joining us in this discussion.
Thank you.